It's been over 1400 days since I first started epicseven, and there's something that I've always wanted to do. With thousands of RTA matches thrown, guild wars lost, accounts bricked, and rift runs failed, it's finally time for me to break down each and every single character in epicseven. This means we'll explore their playstyle, what their skills do, their possible builds, what I'll be using, their PvP/PvE use cases, and their pros and cons. But without further ado, let's get into it. Now that Witch of the Mere Tenebria has been out for a while, we've had the chance to see how she performs across different types of content. As one of the premier control units in epicseven, she brings a versatile kit packed with debuffs and something we've all feared since the first time we heard about it, AoE block. With this, she has shown herself to be incredibly powerful in debuff heavy team comps or even as a general pick against most teams. With this in mind, in today's video, we'll be breaking down her kit, discussing how to build her, and exploring where she shines best. As always though, if you found today's video helpful or informative, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But with that said, let's dive into everything you need to know about Witch of the Mere Tenebria. Let's start by breaking down her skills. Skill 3. To begin with, Mirror of the Abyss serves as her ultimate ability and is a powerful form of team-wide control. With a base cooldown of 8 turns, reduced to 5 through skill enhancements, it traps all enemies in timeless space, dispelling 2 buffs from each target. After this, it then applies block for 2 turns, and this prevents enemies from gaining new buffs. To add to this, block can be incredibly annoying, as healing from allies and cleansing or removing this debuff can only be done by the debuff havers themselves. That means that you need to either take enough turns to shake off the debuff, or you need to cleanse it yourself. This, alongside applying a random debuff between stun, sleep, or redirected provoke for 1 turn, is even more obnoxious to deal with. As a final effect, Tenebria also gains 50% combat readiness when using this, allowing her to take another turn sooner. With this, Tenebria's skill 3 is a strong opener or mid-fight disruptor, especially when fighting against buff-reliant teams, or really against anyone that relies on buffs in general, which in most cases is pretty much everyone except for ML Huayoung. Skill 2. Moving on to her second ability, Consuming Grasp offers both offensive and defensive utility on a 3-turn cooldown. Before said attack lands, it inflicts Rupture on all enemies for 2 turns, and then applies Restrict for 2 turns as well, limiting their ability to gain combat readiness. Following the attack, the caster receives Stealth and a barrier for 2 turns, with the barrier scaling based on level. This skill is especially helpful because the barrier protects Tenebria from taking unnecessary damage. However, it's worth noting that the barrier and stealth can sometimes work against her depending on the matchup. For example, facing units like Desert Jewel Bazaar or trying to manage stealths to protect a specific ally can become tricky. These buffs, while valuable, require careful planning to avoid disrupting your overall team strategy or exposing other stealth-having teammates to be hit. Skill 1. Finally, her basic skill, Mirror Fragment, provides consistent value in any team. It has a 100% chance to apply a random debuff for 1 turn, and among this list of random debuffs she can apply, she can cycle between Speed Down, Defense Break, or Poison. However, the skill's standout feature is the built-in dual attack, and when Tenebria's skill 3 is on cooldown, using the skill triggers a dual attack from the ally with the highest attack. This makes it even more than just a filler move. It actively contributes to the team's damage output and rewards lineups built around high damage allies. Now, when it comes to Witch of the Mere Tenebria's build, there's really only 2 ways that people are playing her. That said, since her most important stats are speed, health/defense, and effectiveness, she's best paired with a speed set alongside either a hit set for more consistent debuffing, or your choice of immunity or a defensive set like health to improve her survivability. Now, because of her split playstyle at times, she can differentiate and allocate stats depending on what her role is, and if she's meant to take turns before any other allies, she of course will prioritize speed plus effectiveness the most. However, if she isn't meant to take the very first turn herself, aiming for more bulk can definitely be an equally viable route, especially if surviving is more important. As for her right side pieces, you'll almost always want to go with speed main on her boots, effectiveness on her ring, and ideally an HP % neck to give her a bit more survivability. But that said, if you're struggling to meet the speed requirement with HP % neck, any alternative main stat is fine. Despite this, some builds where Tenebria is designed to be tankier will have her with an HP/defensive main stat on her ring instead of effectiveness, but of course this is at the cost of sometimes not landing debuffs. For artifacts, choosing between options like Tagahill's Ancient Book, Magic Bubble Maker, Abyssal Crown, and Umbral Keystones is ideal, and this mostly depends on the role you chose for your Tenebria. For example, if played like a simple soul holder, Tagahill's will work best, and by contrast, if looking to apply further debuffs, Magic Bubble Maker is equally as viable. Overall, her build decisions are pretty thematic and straightforward, and in short, maximize her speed/ability to debuff, or make her tanky, and then let her take over the fight with debuffs and control. Next, we need to talk about Witch of the Mere Tenebria's value in PvP, and more specifically how she fits into both RTA and arena formats. With her debuff heavy kit, it's no surprise that she thrives in all PvP scenarios though, and in RTA specifically, Tenebria typically plays plays the role of a heavy control unit, while also sometimes providing a bridging role, allowing your fastest and slower units alike to both take turns. She also pairs particularly well with openers like a mid or lone wolf Payra, both of whom offer team-wide combat readiness increases and allows her to be built slightly slower or allows the entire team to lap and cycle against an enemy several times. By contrast, Tenebria's role in arena/guild war/more AI dictated content tends to shift more towards functioning as an anti-cleave opener. She's often slotted into defense teams where her job is to de-incentivize players from taking speed options, as she can be built very fast and is impactful if she takes turn 1. Because of this, arena Tenebrias usually prioritize higher speed, often pushing her well above 280 to ensure that she can activate her debuffs before the enemy moves. That said, this can backfire if the enemy simply outspeeds her, which more experienced cleave players do, but this of course is a gamble. Now this is part of the reason why players consider Tenebria to be strongest in RTA, where there is more diversity, risk, and gambling in terms of playstyle, game approach, and counterplay, and her ability to flex in between different team types, especially in drafts that lean more towards control or mid-speed setups, makes her a solid and consistent pick. Now while she might not always be the flashiest unit on the field, her utility and disruption in PvP gives her insane value, especially for the current meta. Now when it comes to PvE content in epicseven, Witch of the Mirror Tenebria unfortunately finds herself in a fairly limited spot. While her kit excels in PvP due to its heavy focus on debuff and control, most PvE bosses are either immune to crowd control or resistant to her most important debuffs like restrict and block, which makes a large part of her value ineffective in these encounters. As a result, she struggles to find a consistent role in PvE modes like Hunts, Abyss, or Labyrinth, where more specialized units tend to shine. To add to this, her only notable contribution in PvE scenarios is her skill 1's dual attack ability, which can sometimes offer support to your main DPS, especially in long battles or auto farming setups. However, even this niche value is overshadowed by dedicated dual attack enablers or buffer units who bring more reliable team support, damage, or sustain. This isn't even accounting, by the way, for the fact that she does need to have her skill 3 on cooldown before this feature is even active, and as a result, in her current state, Tenebria simply lacks the versatility and impact needed to justify a spot in most PvE team comps. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of Tenebria. For her pros, she is definitely one of the best debuffers. She can hold book, which is extremely valuable, and AoE block feels extremely oppressive specifically, and Tenebria is one of the only ways to apply block to multiple targets as of now. To add to this, having a dual attack that drags the highest attack character is always useful, as it prevents you from having super wasteful turns when your skill 3/skill 2 are on cooldown, but as a result of the versatility of her kit, she can therefore be on different builds and actually surprise players in terms of what speed or what type of setup that she loads in with. Finally, she does have an amazing design, but Tenebria isn't without her cons. To be clear, she is a Moonlight 5-star, so you do either need to get her on banner or have to be extremely lucky to pull her, but to add to this, she is mostly focused just on PvP, so if that isn't your thing, she may not find nearly as much value for your account. That's really it when it comes to cons, however, and as a result, when it comes to deciding whether or not to pull for Witch of the Mirror Tenebria, there's a lot to consider. Based on her pros, she is clearly designed for PvP focused players, and otherwise the investment to build an obtainer can feel frustrating at times, as Mystic medals are extremely difficult to come by and the Mystic packs are even more expensive. That said, in the current state of RTA, Arena, and even sometimes Guild War, she is fantastic and provides a complete strangling of the opponents with debuffs. However, as always, this is yet another opener type character who really does need decent speed gear and well-rolled necks or rings to make effective, but with this, if I just described a character that you really like, you should definitely pull for this character. But otherwise, I just like the way that she looks, and as a result, I did end up pulling for her. Thanks again for watching though, everyone. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy, good night.